Díomh agus fáilte arás to the Crazy House Prices podcast, a podcast where I help you buy your own home, understand the madness of the Irish housing market and generally just adult a bit better. I'm your host, Ciarán Mulqueen, and today in episode 47, I'm covering the latest housing news stories. I won't lie, this starts off fairly depressing, but there is a small bit of good news at the end. I wish I could include more good news bits, but they're few and far between, and my aim with these podcasts isn't just to depress you, but also just give you the bits that you need to know and hopefully encourage you to speak up about it and call out those in power and demand more from them. If you've been following my Instagram page or listening to the podcast for the last while, you'll know I've been complaining about a lack of housing supply and the numbers are getting worse and worse and worse. So this week the figures came out and they are really terrifying for anyone who's hoping to buy a home in 2026 and 2027. We've seen construction starts collapse to levels that we haven't seen in a long time. It's really grim reading, and while supply is collapsing, the Department of Housing seem to be busy fighting a PR war. We have leaked documents showing they are absolutely terrified of media scrutiny, and we finally got confirmation that the insulting chores video wasn't just a mistake by some junior staff member. It was actually signed off at the highest level, despite the Minister for Housing claiming he knew nothing about it, which beggars belief. We also have a really heartbreaking new report on older people facing homelessness that we really need to talk about. It's the hidden crisis that nobody is discussing enough, in my opinion. And then just to remind us how completely broken and bonkers the planning system is, we have a story about a golf club in Limerick trying to block 114 family homes because they're worried about bad golfing, which you literally just couldn't make this stuff up. We're going to go deep on all of this today, and crucially I want to talk about a new cost rental scheme in Dublin. So there's a lot of spin calling it cost rental, so I'm going to explain why that's actually a lie and why you need to know the difference. And then to finish, I'll have some good news about another mortgage interest rate drop. So let's get into it. Right, let's start with the most critical number of the week, 16,400. So according to the Irish Independent, that is the number of new homes commenced or started in 2025. To put that into context for you, in 2024, the government was going on and on and on about 32,000 plus starts. So we've seen basically a 50% collapse in activity in just 12 months. That is an absolutely massive drop. Now, you need to understand why this has happened. It wasn't an accident. It's down to government policy. So throughout 2023 and 2024, the government introduced temporary measures, specifically the development levy waiver and the Uisce Éireann rebate. Basically, these were massive tax breaks designed to light a fire under developers to get them building. And it kind of worked. Developers did rush to file commencement notices to lock in those savings before the deadline. But that just created a kind of artificial spike in the stats. And once that deadline passed, it all dried up. So what does this matter to you? Well, it matters because of the lag time. A house started today takes about 18 months to build. So the record starts that the government bragged about last year in 2024 are the homes that are being finished now. But these dismal, like 16,000 starts from 2025, these are the homes that should be hitting the market in 2026 and 2027. And this figure effectively guarantees that 2027 is going to be a horrendous year for supply. So we're walking into a massive problem where almost no new stock comes to the market. And if you think prices are high now, well then just wait until we have a year with practically zero supply for sale. The government needs to stop kind of celebrating these completions from 2 years ago and really start panicking about the pipeline right now. And as I keep banging on about, only roughly 25 to 35% of all those new build homes will actually be available for sale, and the rest are usually social or self-builds or build to rent apartments. So this makes tackling the whole vacant and derelict properties thing just even more important. While the supply pipeline is continuing to collapse, what is the Department of Housing focusing on? Are they focusing on solving it? Absolutely not. So two separate stories broke this week that proved the Department of Housing is obsessed with spin rather than substance. So the first one is the chores video. So do you remember that video? It was the one where they made adults advising moving back home with their parents to do chores and to follow house rules. I posted about it at the time and there was a major reaction to it. And Then the narrative from the department was like, oh, that was a mistake. That was like a low level error. A junior member signed that off or whatever. Well, the Irish Examiner has seen the actual emails and they can confirm that senior officials, so the people at the very, very top of the department, signed off on that campaign. So this reveals their mindset. They genuinely viewed the housing crisis as a lifestyle adjustment for young people and a PR problem. They thought the solution wasn't build more homes or tackle vacant homes. It was teach millennials how to load the dishwasher. It's really patronizing. It's insulting. And it does kind of just prove that they're really out of touch with the reality of forced multi-generational living. Then the Irish Times got their hands on an internal risk register for the new housing plan. And what did the department identify as a major risk? Not homelessness, not supply, but media scrutiny. So the document warns that scrutiny could lead to inaccurate representations and hinder public support. They even suggested a strategy of hiring influencers to push positive messaging to younger demographics. This is just full on gaslighting. So the department isn't worried that their plan is failing. They're more worried about people noticing it. And when a government's department lists scrutiny as a risk, it means that they know their plan is crap, basically. Scrutiny is only a risk if you have something to hide. And the idea of using influencers, like you can't like Instagram and TikTok your way out of a crisis. You can pay an influencer to say whatever you want, but no influencer worth anything will take that job on, because it would just completely erode their trust with their followers and their value then go with other brands. So they're like, the department here are just trying to solve a kind of brick and mortar problem with PR. It's not going to work. And if you want to know what the department should be worried about instead of their public image, just look at the report published the other day on the 19th of January by the Simon community. So while the government is worried about their bad PR, we have a situation where homelessness among people aged 65 and over has more than doubled in the last 5 years. We now have over 260 people over the age of 65 living in emergency accommodation. Think about that for a second. These are people who have likely worked their entire lives, raised families, paid their taxes, contributed to the country, and now in their kind of not their final years, but in their like golden years, let's say, instead of security and comfort, which most of them will have, they're sleeping in like a B&B or a hotel room, and they're just terrified of what happens next. I got sent a story last week of someone's granny in her late 70s been renting the same home for 50 years and has been evicted with nowhere to go. So why is this happening? Well, the report spells it out that the private rental safety net has just been completely eroded. If a landlord decides to sell up an older person on a fixed pension, literally cannot afford to rent anywhere else, because most new rentals are insane money. It's $3,000 for a studio apartment beside me here in Dublin 8. Rents have gone up so much, and obviously that no one's pension is covering that unless they're absolutely minted, and if that's the case, they usually own their own home anyway. So they get a notice to quit and they've nowhere to go. It's a really hidden crisis. It's really desperate, and frankly I just think it's a real stain on our society that we're treating our older generation like this. You're probably overpaying for your mortgage protection. Now, I'm not, because I use Beat the Bank and I've been dealing with them for years. They're an Irish company, and in a world where most companies in the home buying process are out for themselves, it's refreshing to have one that genuinely cares about you. As cliche as that sounds, but they really do. So how they work is they check the main insurers, they match the best price, and then they take more off. It's quick, it's online, and they handle all the paperwork. They also do income protection, life insurance, and soon they'll be doing home insurance, car insurance, even pet insurance. So www.beatthebank.ie to get a quote in seconds. Now, from the tragedy of elderly homelessness to the absolute farce of the planning system, the Journal reported on an objection in Limerick that is crazy. It's the kind of thing you read about in Waterford Whispers. So Castle Troy Golf Club has objected to a planning application for 114 new homes right next door. Now, they're not objecting because of like traffic or water pressure or density. They're objecting because of stray golf balls. So they claim that their members sliced the ball so badly that they will hit the new houses or injure the residents, which could lead to lawsuits against the golf club. They also cited noise from lawnmowers as the reason why houses shouldn't be built there. So I just find this really arrogant. It's quite funny. Like, we've a national housing emergency. We've pensioners in emergency accommodation, as I just mentioned, and we've a private golf club trying to block 114 family homes because they can't keep the ball on the fairway. Now, look, I like golf, do you know what I mean? But I'm not a big fan of golf clubs in urban areas. Like, I think that is such a waste of space. I think they should be all like, in more rural areas. And if people want to go golf, they can drive. They drive anyway because they have to bring their golf clubs. So, but I do like golf. But the solution here is obviously just put up a net, like, or high fencing or something, which is standard for golf courses in urban areas. But instead, they want to kind of sterilize the land to protect their hobby. And it's the ultimate example of why our planning system is just broken. It gives equal weight to a bad tee shot and a family needing a roof over their head. So I'm assuming, or well, I hope anyway, the council throws this one out pretty quickly. Now, we need to talk about the rental market because there's a lot of noise this week and I want to clear up a couple of things. So, the rent tax credit. So, Sinn Féin have highlighted that only 1/3 of eligible renters have claimed the rent tax credit. And why? It's obviously, it's not down to laziness, it's down to fear. So, I talk to people every day in my DMs, obviously, and I know renters are really terrified that if they give revenue their landlord's details to claim the credit, the landlord will get a tax audit, get angry, and issue a notice to quit. So the low uptake is proof that tenants just feel zero security. They'd rather lose out on €1,000 than risk rocking the boat with their landlord. It's desperate. Also, a huge amount of landlords are not registered with the RTB. Now, you can technically still claim the rent tax credit without the RTB number, but I'm not sure technically if you're supposed to do it. So I would definitely get advice from an accountant. Alan, my accountant from Cloud Accountants on Instagram, is great. He's done loads of work on this, on the rent tax credit. So maybe check out his Instagram page. But look, either way, it's ridiculous. And this brings me to the good news story of the week, which comes with a bit of a health warning. So applications have opened for 56 new cost rental homes in Oscar Traynor Woods in Dublin 5. These are a long time in the works. The rents are €1,547 for a 2-bed and €1,784 for a 3-bed. Applications are open now on the Dublin City Council website. Now, first off, look, if you're eligible, apply. These are secure homes and they're definitely below the market rent, but we need to stop calling these things cost rental because that's a name taken directly from the Vienna model and it's not cost rental, it's misleading. In the Vienna model, cost rental literally means the rent covers the actual cost of building and maintaining the unit, and once the loan is paid off, the rent stays low or drops. It acts as a brake on the market, whereas in Ireland, our government have taken cost rental, but it's actually defined as being at least 25% below the market rent. So that's the problem there. It's linked to the market, not the cost. So it's not cost rental, and it really annoys me that they keep calling it this. So, for example, if market rents in Dublin are €3,000, well then the cost rental goes to 2,250. That's not affordable. In Vienna, renters pay roughly 1/3 of what we pay in Dublin because their model just ignores the private market entirely, and it's nothing to do with market rents. It's only to do with cost. So yeah, look, 1,500 is better than 2,400, but let's not pretend this is the Vienna model. It's just discounted market rental. That's all it is. And as long as we link it to the private market, it will never be truly affordable. Okay, let's finish on some genuine positives to lift the mood because it's not all doom and gloom if you're looking for a mortgage. So PTSB has officially joined the kind of price war here, or dropping their rates following Avant Money's move last week. So PTSB have cut their fixed rates by up to 0.45%, which is a lot. And the thing about this is it could be a bit of a tipping point. So when one non-bank lender like Avant cuts their rates, well then the big banks can the pillar banks can kind of sometimes ignore it. But when a pillar bank like PTSB cuts their rates, well then AIB and Bank of Ireland may have to respond. So my advice is always, if you're on a variable rate or if you're coming to the end of a fixed term, don't just auto renew with your current bank. Loyalty gets you absolutely nowhere with banks. So the market's moving a bit in your favour now for the first time in a couple of years. So really do shop around or get a mortgage broker to do it for you. Most of them are free. I'm in a partnership with Finance Solutions. They're my trusted mortgage broker. If you get in touch with them, tell them I sent you, they'll get you sorted, but they're really excellent. And then finally, to counter I know supply has been horrendous, but at least now Cairn Homes have announced this week that they're ramping up. They want to deliver 6,000 homes over the next 2 years. And there aren't many developers left that are building homes for sale. So we do need more like this. And it does show that despite like national slowdown, some of the big companies like Cairn and Glenveagh or whatever are still moving. So if you're a first time buyer, keep an eye out on their new phases. I think they're due to be launching in spring, and definitely set up like daft alerts in areas because they will advertise them on daft before they're finished to get a kind of gauge on numbers. Agus Sinné Lahai on episode shut of the Crazy House Prices podcast. Please make sure you're subscribed to the Crazy House Prices podcast so you don't miss future episodes. And if you found this useful, share it with someone, subscribe, leave a review, all the usual stuff that podcasters ask you to do. And if you want to support what I do and get access to bonus Q&As, you can join my Patreon for just €3 a month. It helps keep the podcast going, gives you exclusive access to my housing community, and the first week is free. And of course, my book, How to Buy a Home in Ireland, is available nationwide. You can borrow it for free at your local library as well, which is great, and I've seen it up for sale in a few places. I was actually only reading through it the other day for a post, and I don't toot my own horn enough on my book. It's actually really good. It's a few years old now. There's a couple of little bits that need updating, but 95% of it is still relevant to today. But anyway, that's enough of me banging on. Thanks for listening. Slán the phone.